Hey, I'm back. So what I'm going to do is just talk through, as I would sort of see this bird in the field. If I get a good look at it, I'm going to be saying these sorts of things like I'm about to say out loud. So angle a little bit above 2 o'clock, a little bit steeper. Back going all the way down to where the upper tail coverts start is really pretty flat, slight little bump at the back of the head. The head is pretty large. And the body is sort of a long oval. There's a swoop down, kind of an angle back, and then a poof forward underneath the throat. So here I'm looking at the shape of this air right next to the throat. That's going to be a very useful angle for me. Bill is longer than I would imagine, so that's surprisingly long in my brain. So my mental image of how a McGillivray's warbler bill looks is way too short. I want to notice that and say it out loud. Otherwise, I'll draw a bill that's too short on my bird. The black goes back in a big forward stripe well over where the bill comes in, gives you a big dark lores section and these broken eye ring. It's about a quarter on the top, quarter on the bottom, white with black on either side of that. Big gray hood going back a little bit past where the nape is and then swooping down on the chest, but making kind of a line across the bird where the nape and the chest come in. And on the bottom of the chest, there's some black feathers spotting in there. Yellow-green on the chest, getting a little bit more olivey, and you're sort of seeing through the feathers, lighter, darker feathers, more olivey tone. Right on the upper flanks of the bird. Olive green tone on the upper back, then shading into more of a brown, a brownish slight green tint. The edges of the secondaries and the primaries have yellow lines on them, a little bit of yellow underneath the tail, but sort of shading into green, kind of green-brown on the top of the tail, yellow undertail coverts, pink-orange legs, very sturdy, kind of thick-looking leg. So you see, again, I'm doing the same thing. I'm saying out loud what I see. And, and then I'm in a place to try to draw this bird, right? So let's try to take what you see here. I hope that you did, I'm going to say one other thing. This sort of zone and feathers, this olive zone coming in here, those are called the scapular feathers. There's sort of an interesting black, big kind of crack in the scapular feathers that kind of pushes up into the back of the nape and the front of the chest. That kind of structure thing is a little bit surprising to me, a little bit interesting. So I want to say that out loud so I'm more likely to catch that. What we're going to do is I'm going to leave this up here, and for just about, a couple of minutes, let's just take some time, and I'm going to get you to ask you to draw this bird. But if you are willing to try it, turn away from the screen and draw it from memory. And when you think you've got everything that you have in your brain still put down to paper, then look back. And what you're looking for is not to beat yourself up, oh, I got this part wrong, but just notice where your memory was really different from what you had in the book, on the bird here. And remember the importance of using some of those little lines. Draw all over it. And see if you can see what will kind of come out in your memory. When you feel you need to, you can look back. But I do want to encourage people, if possible, to try to to first just see what you do have in your memory on this bird. I don't have a photographic memory. I don't know if such things really exist. I haven't yet met somebody with it. I get a memory that gets better with direct attention. You also find that as you study bird anatomy and you start to learn more about birds, there's less that you have to kind of keep in memory because you'll kind of get a general bird plan, a general bird model of what kind of is happening on a generic bird. And then you will be able to compare that with what you're seeing. So you'll just sort of say like, whoa, like the head on this bird really feels large. You don't have to memorize everything then, because you have that model in your head. Just give this a little bit more time. I forgot those nice white eye arcs in mine. How could I forget?
Now try to see if you can use words to augment and improve your drawing. I think a big part of this is being willing to have your drawing not be perfect, and just sort of think of it as a starting place for note taking. And and here we're not even getting into like behaviors of the birds or other things they're doing, how it sounds, and recording those sorts of details. But what we're doing is we're giving ourselves permission to put down a giving ourselves permission to put down marks that are wrong, and then adjust that with written notes or drawing over it or another drawing on the side. That kind of makes much less of a fetish out of the drawing and more of an emphasis on observations that you observed from the bird. Right, I'm now going to look back at the bird for my first time. And Chris, can you guys see my drawing on your screen?
Yes.
All right. So on this, because I because I've made marks on paper, I'm now better able to look at this and see where it is accurate and where it's not. So, and a couple of big things stand out to me. One is on the screen, watch where I kind of move the cursor. These are the greater coverts on the wing. I made mine a little pad way up here, and these actually take up a bigger portion of the wing. So I didn't do those justice, and I'm going to now move my those covert feathers down lower. And what's neat is that those are sort of a brownie olive, and I need to have those be as a bigger, bolder brownie olive. But that wouldn't have really stuck out to me as as something unless I had kind of put marks down on paper. And it's really useful for me then to be able to come back and sort of see where my impressions of what I thought I saw are different. Another thing is in the sort of the face of this bird in here, that needs to be looked at again. If I get another closer look at the bird, here is I'm going to just sort of draw this sort of face part of the bird, forgetting its expression. I've got a big bill, and notice how the bill comes into, sort of sweeps into the face. So I've got feathers of the chin and the malar that come up on that. And then the bird head sort of sweeps back from there. The eye, sort of on the same line as the sort of the center of the mouth back here. And there's that neat eye arc above it and that neat eye arc below it. And this cool black part in here, I really didn't do that justice. So I'm going to draw, I really want to kind of get this black zone in here that comes out as kind of a neat little point under here, and then kind of comes along the underside of the bill as a little trim like that. That kind of gives me a better look at the expression of this bird. I'm going to draw the eye dark, but leave a little highlight in it to make that eye look wet. I'm going to put a little bit of dark right back here, and then color in a bit of the top of this bill. So that gives me a better face. And I'm not able to really see that I missed its expression until I get my, I've actually got something on my paper that I'm responding to. I think that this is one of the real secrets of keeping a journal, is this strange idea of committing yourself to a thought, getting something down on paper, and then you can look at that thing on paper and it bounces back to you. You can see what you're thinking. And the same is true for the kind of questions that you ask, or the connections that you make. When you're able to look down at your paper and see all that stuff bouncing back at you, you're able to see what you're thinking. You're able to notice what you're noticing. You can see what kinds of questions you're asking. And when it's all done in the privacy of your own brain, that space, I think, is really deceptive. Because you will get, you're not able to notice as well where you're not observing something accurately.
John, this is Chris. Let me interrupt for a second. If you can't see John Muir's, Jack's drawing, go up to the view in the top right, normally in the top right corner, and click on the side-by-side speaker view, and you'll be able to see both the picture and his drawing.
So that is, where I'm just sort of allowing myself to notice. I'm not, there's no commitment to having what you make on the head be right. Like, so very often I'll have like drawings of birds, and I'll have a little line pointing to the head saying the head should be larger, or the head should be smaller, or this wing is too long. And that is not a mistake. It's not like, oh, you've made a mistake in your drawing and I should be ashamed of that and wish I could fix it. I actually have fixed it just by adding a little note saying that this head should be larger. And because it's not about having a drawing, it's having about your whole kind of sensory experience, what all you're visualizing getting down onto the paper. And your written notes are an equally valid part of doing that. Let's.
Hey, Jack, this is Chris. Let's get to some questions so people don't drop out here. I've got a handful of questions I'd love to ask you. And I think our Zoom master is going to give us a side-by-side view. And if you don't mind, let me ask you a handful of questions that the people have been asking through the session. First of all, you talked about how you are talking through your view. Do you ever use voice memos to record what you're seeing in the environment so you can listen back when you're somewhere drier or somewhere warmer?
No, I find that just the process, that production effect phenomenon, the process of saying out loud what I see is powerful enough that even a few minutes later I can sit down. Like the idea in my head of the yellow-eyed junco is still vivid enough that I can sit down and bust out a junco right now, because I was verbalizing. If you at home did not verbalize the junco, but you verbalized the McGilveries, notice how those McGilveries details are sticking in your head better because you said it out loud. So I find that like the voice memos, or even any kind of technological adjunct for me at this point is kind of distracting to me.
So
a lot of
a lot of questions will then go with photos. Do you take photos? Birds are often seen for such a short time and they're zipping around. Do you do photos?
I don't. I am interested in trying to get myself to pay more attention on the spot. And there's some interesting research on photographs. And I should make I'm going to make a very important distinction here between what photographers do and how photographers see and taking snapshots of birds. Here's the neuropsych study that was done. They took a bunch of people and had them walk around an art museum. They gave some of them cameras and they said, we'd like you to take photographs of the pieces of art that really move you the most and really kind of speak to you. And so some people went out and they did that. And they had other people just, and they said, come on back and we'll talk to you about that experience later. And then they had other people go out and they said, go out and look at the pieces of artwork in this museum, and we want you to notice what kind of speaks to you. And we'll come back and we'll talk about that later. And what they found is that the people who had cameras in their hands had significantly worse memories of what they saw. And what they think is going on is there's a phenomenon called the Zergenic effect. And what it is that when your brain gets a feeling of a task is complete, your brain can then safely discard all the mental resources that are kind of encompassing that or wrapped around that. So if you've ever studied to take a test and then taken the test and then a complete brain dump of all that information, okay, I'm so glad I don't have to remember this anymore, right? Your brain is like task complete and select all, delete. You get a real sense of satisfactory task completion, when you go like, oh, look, the branch is now really close to me. Click. Oh, I got it, right? And you get that task completion sense, and then you're on to the next thing, right? So if you're taking snapshots, the camera can actually impair your memory.
So as you know, many birders are really,
But actually, let me just, there's other people, there's some photographers in there who are going like, Laws, what are you talking about?
laws
Right?
out.
Right. So here's the difference with a photographer. Remember how I said the journal slows me down? For someone taking snapshots, the camera speeds them up because they get this, okay, I got it. Okay, I got it. And you get this sense, okay, it's safe to move on to the next thing because you've got it with 1 billion megapixels. But for the photographer, the camera slows them down. You ever been in the field with a photographer? Right? They can't get away from the Junko, right? Because they've seen Junkos before, but they've never seen this Junko in this light, right? And they're getting these different angles, and then they're going to kind of be thinking about like, if I go over there, as this flock moves to there, I'm going to be there and then be at eye level with these things. They're setting up their shot. They're looking. They're taking in the light. They're taking in the composition of the place. They know the bird's behavior and when it does this, and then and then they're getting their shots. The camera slows them down. So they, with those people back at the art museum, all they had to do is put a camera in somebody's hands and say, like, what we'd like you to do is use this to really document the specific aspects of this subject that are really speaking to you, and use these pictures deliberately to kind of emphasize that which you really want to show. Those people came back with good memories of it. So it's not that there's something wrong with the camera, there's something wrong with the way we're using the
Got it.
camera. And is there anything wrong with taking, so I use my camera in snapshots for pictures of my family. Also because my wife is a real photographer, but none of the pictures have her in them. So I can help with little. But when I want to really remember and immerse myself in an experience, I'm getting out my journal. I have another journal where I am documenting and describing all the wacky, goofy things that my daughters do. And as they're growing up, I'm recording these goofy events and the things that they say and they do and the kind of crazy predicaments that we get themselves in. Or so we went up and we watched there's a murmuration of starlings that's happening a little bit north of us here. And the family went up there and we observed the murmuration. And so I've got these diagrams and notes about the murmuration, this flock of starlings doing this in the sky, and it was mind-blowing. But part of that experience, I was lying on my back, and my daughter came and she lay on her back, and she put her head right here on my shoulder, and we're both looking up with our heads like right next to each other. And I realized like this murmuration is amazing. And this little moment with my daughter's head lying on like me being her pillow, that's also something that I want to remember forever. And you think that with experiences like this, that like I'm going to remember this forever. But that's not how our memory works. Our memory doesn't have a way of deliberately encoding the sublime and the beautiful and these wonderful moments of our lives. They're really good at recording trauma because there's a survival value to avoiding that situation again. So your brain will remember the trauma, but not the sublime. So I also, in my journal, just drew a little cartoon picture of us lying there and her doing her I notice, I wonder, it reminds me of looking up at the sky as we're looking at this flock of starlings. And that takes that moment and it allows it from all the moments that I experience, that to be something that I deliberately choose, that this is part of the fabric of my memory. The journal is your brain on paper. It's those things that you want to encode and fold into the fabric of your long-term memory. That's where you do something deliberate.
Yeah, good. So you're journaling as once you've got some journaling and some sketching. How do you mix the journaling and the sketching together?
So for me, for me, it's all the same thing. So when I say journaling, I mean using words and pictures and numbers to record my observations, questions, and the connections that I make. So words, pictures, numbers. I notice that when it reminds me of those two pieces come together. And that is what I'm referring to as journaling. So journaling isn't the writing. Journaling is the taking your experience and putting it into the journal. So I want to deliberately use pictures and images, and I want to deliberately use words and deliberately use numbers. Each of those systems is going to get your brain to experience whatever you're doing in a slightly different way. The way you think with pictures is different than the way that you think with words. So that's why I use both of those together, not just because sometimes words are more effective or sometimes pictures are more effective to describe part of an experience. Sometimes numbers are. You're looking at that big flock of starlings and you can say there's a lot of starlings. Are there 1,000 starlings? Are there 10,000 starlings? Are there 100,000 starlings? And so counting and estimating is also a strategy that I deliberately use because each one of those modes makes my brain engage with that, the wonder of being there in the presence of these birds in a slightly different way. And that is where the magic happens. You're using this not to get the pretty thing onto your journal. It's actually all about your brain. It's all about trying to get your brain to have the opportunity to, you've got this short period of time where you are alive and sentient and you're here. I mean, just that alone, you won the lottery. You're here now. This is your brain. And now you're out in the presence of wildness and the spectacle of the golden crowned sparrow that has migrated all the way back down from Alaska just to pop up in front of you and sing. And you want your brain to wrap around this magical moment. The journal is the platform for that to happen in a much more powerful way than we ever do if we just stare and look at something. Because again, you stare at nature, nature just stares back.
So is all your journal work out in the field, or do you go back at home and fill it in and fill in details and colors later on, or is it all done in the field?
I'd say it's mostly done in the field. When I can, I do it all in the field. And so but sometimes I will do things, fill in more stuff later on. So I'm just kind of looking around at some pages. Yeah, everything that I'm looking at here, this was all done in the field. This is all done in the field. Yes, this is everything I'm looking at so far. This was mostly all done in the field. This was done later. This was a night drive looking for leopards and hyenas and things. And that was a page that I did later on reflecting on that experience. Or sometimes I will look at a page and sort of realize that there were some notes or observations that I didn't make. This was what I first thought was a mamba that had flopped down out of the cover of this scratch onto this bank. And then later on, somebody explained to me that actually was probably a forest cobra. So both were interesting. And when that happened, I made just a few kind of quick light pencil doodles and a few notes. And then I later on went in and filled that in. But I try to do that. The longer you wait, the more that happens is the more your brain confabulates. Confabulation is the process by which your brain takes events and details that did not happen and seamlessly stitches those into the memories that you have. And as I look back at things that I remember vividly from my past, most of the vivid aspects of that are stuff that my brain completely made up. You may know people who have you get in an argument with them about Thanksgiving, like, no, that happened to me. And I told you that story. You ever seen that happen? But somebody else believes that was actually their experience. And they're thinking the same thing about you. Are you crazy? That happened to me. Or sometimes we'll take just something that we see in a photograph. And our memories change over time.
I've,
Sorry.
I've got a brain question, and it doesn't seem to be a big problem for you as you've gone through this, but a lot of folks are insecure, or as they're starting to sketch, they're going, oh, that's no good or whatever. How do you silence your inner critic?
That is huge. That is huge. And that is one of the key questions. And it was something that we've discovered with this nature journaling community is that a lot of people come to like our classes and things thinking that I need to learn, like, what is the trick on how you draw secondary feathers, right? I'm having a really hard time kind of drawing like, you know, the secondary feathers and the primary feathers in the wing, like that, some little technical thing, like how you draw the fur in the squirrel's tail. That's what I need to know. But really more important than that is exactly what you just said. How do you get around that silent, that critic is there and is so loud saying, you can't do this. Who you like, no, that's for somebody else to do. You're not an artist. You can't do this. So stop. And especially as adults, especially males in our society, do not give themselves the permission and the wiggle room to try activities and be in that sort of vulnerable place where you're not an expert at it yet. And we're in a kind of professional culture where we all identify ourselves by our capacities, the things which we can do. And so being vulnerable and being a beginner in something and being new, being not good at something yet is scary, and it's a real vulnerability. And so a lot of people don't do it. We don't try. And what we do find is that a number of people, for some reason, young people are willing to learn things. And then not being an expert at things in our adulthood becomes a real vulnerability. And as we get older, we kind of go like, I don't care anymore, right? I want to try that. And so you'll see like when people like learning how to paint or something like that, how to draw, you'll see kids doing it and you'll see elders doing it. But especially people in the middle of their life, things that you're not good at yet are a threat.
Well, you're busy making a living and raising kids, and
that's part of it. But also, I think a big part of it is that we can very easily talk ourselves like, you know, I'm busy and I'm learning Spanish, and I'm busy and I'm learning how to play the ukulele, and you can in adulthood be you have to embrace what's called a growth mindset. And that is understanding that there's now a ton of clear neurological data behind the idea that the way we get better at things is repetition with effort. And through that work and deliberate practice in those fields, we get better at things. And it doesn't take you some 10,000 hours to kind of get to the point where you really have competencies in these areas. And you can do that skill.
Okay, on that, I'm going to ask you a couple more beginner questions, and then we'll give one last plug, and then we'll be done. So the beginner questions are, how do you identify the birds you see? Do you have books, or how do you figure out what you're seeing and what you're drawing? And the next question, you can blend them together, is like, if you live in the city, you don't have a lot of wildland, where do you go to see birds? Do you look at them online? What do you do? So beginner questions. You live in the city and you don't know much about birds. How do you get started with this?
Not a beginner question at all. I mean, especially under COVID, you know, here we are under house lockdown. How are you going to kind of engage and train yourself as an observer? And it turns out that journaling in COVID is a great thing to do, because you can then, if you're stuck at home and you kind of like, I know that's a junco out there, okay? But there's nothing for me to see here. There's this junco out there. But I've seen the junco before. So there's nothing for me to look at. I wish I had some birds that I could look at. Yeah, it's just the junco out there. But if you're a journaler, you're like, look, it's a junco.
right? Okay, but I haven't seen this Junco yet. And so you're gonna geek out on this Junco. And you'll be like, dude, Junco, right, there's a Junco again. It's a really good look at a Junco, right? And you get excited about it, and you actually get excited about it. Or other people are like, yeah, I've seen a Junco before, because when what you do with birds is you count them, you put them on your list, right? But no, I want to look at it. I want to like what's up with this Junco? Can I see that there actually can I identify any of these as individuals? Ooh, that'd be kind of fun, right? And David Sibley was geeking out looking at Juncos in his backyard, and he discovered that there are different postures and slight head angles that male and female Juncos have. So this is David Allen Sibley, yo. And what's he doing? He's looking at his backyard, he's just geeking out, looking at Juncos and making sketches of them, right? And so we can take advantage of, at a much deeper level, of the nuances of what nature gives us just in our backyard. I live in a suburban area, so there's a hummingbird feeder there, and there's a bird feeder over there. So some critters come to me, right? And then I get to geek out on those. Put in some suet feeders, and different things will come to you. And the idea is to just start with like the low-hanging fruit, are like the common things that are around you all the time. So you get really kind of familiar with those, and then can you get used to the sounds of the common things that are around you? And then when a different sound shows up, you'll be like, ooh, something different is happening in my yard. And you know those locals, and then other things will come in. So within a reasonable distance of me, I can get to a few different habitats, and those have different sorts of things. But I would start just with getting familiar with the locals. When we can get all have social gatherings again, and we will, going to things like bird festivals or Audubon Society bird walks are really great ways to learn. Sometimes in those you are so inundated by so many species that it feels really kind of overwhelming. So don't be intimidated with that. Start with just, kind of know your kind of local team. And if you can kind of get yourself to sort of see the nuances of like, oh, that is the female house sparrow, right? There's a house sparrow and there's a purple finch, and they both come to my feeder, right? Can I, just on those, sort of see what those differences are? And you're training your eye to kind of wrap around these to a different level of subtlety and detail than we normally use. Normally what your brain is kind of going like, oh, bird that I can't eat, I got it, right? But if you train yourself with the local, the common and the ordinary things, you'll become a much better birder faster. And see if on those common and ordinary things, can you get yourself to observe those with such intensity that, like David Sibley did, you start to see the novel in the familiar. So you start to see new things in these things that have been there in front of you your entire life. But now you're looking at them with new eyes.
Right. And even if you're in the city, there are pigeons that can be pretty fascinating, and little critters at McDonald's. Okay, last in the parking lot of McDonald's with your french fries.
And also a great thing to do is to start to just be from the get-go. Be somebody who intentionally geeks out on behavior. So not just, you don't have to know what it is. Like when I go to a new habitat, I went down and explored in Mexico, and I deliberately did not bring a bird book. I'm a birder, and I didn't bring a bird book. And what I did is I just drew all the little things that I was finding. And then I was starting to, like, on my own, like, figure out, like, oh my gosh, like this. There was like a discovery, like this is actually the female of this. Oh, wow. But that all comes just from observation. And then later on, I went and got a field guide and looked, oh, this one is this one is this. But I'd come up with all my little names for them, and I figured out like their little voices and stuff all on my own. So even if you don't know what it is, you can still actually do deep observation and looking at the thing. And that's huge. So the names are just things that the American Ornithological Union made up. Right. And sometimes they change them. But the thing that doesn't change is that what we can get from the experience of really observing what's in front of you. So if you are observing something, and like there's a bunch of, like I'm okay with identifying birds by sound. And so what I'll do is I'll often in my journal, I'm listening to a bird and I'm just transcribing the sound into my journal like I did with the bulbuls. And I'll call it like mystery bird number 19, right? And then I'll hear it again. I'm like, oh, there's mystery bird number 19. Or sometimes I'll give them kind of onomatopoeia names. Like this was the whoop-de-whip, right? I'll be like, there's the whoop-de-whip. And then I get out there some other time and I hear whoop-de-whip, whoop-de-whip. And I look up and like, it's the bulbul. Oh, that's who the whoop-de-whip is. And so that then you can connect this sound up with this bird. You can learn a ton, even if you are not connecting the official name of this bird to the critter. But then so you practice doing those things, and then you come to a birding festival. There'll be somebody with you who will like you're like, I'm having a hard time telling this from this, and you'll be with like the A team of people will help you kind of like, I'm going to connect this bird with this sound, and then and it's naming, being able to name them doesn't take the magic out of it. It's a very useful thing. It's just it's not the only thing we're doing. It's not our sort of sole objective here. We want to be alive. We want to be present in the world. We want to observe deeply. The names, as long as we don't use that as the place where I've got the name and now I stop looking, because you can that is a danger. People will be like, oh, beautiful. Oh, that's the most, look at that pink on the chest. Oh, that's gorgeous. Whoa, what a wonderful thing. And then somebody comes up and goes like, oh yeah, that's a male lazuli bunting. And everybody goes, oh, cool. Okay, what's this over here? Right? Like once you have the name, don't zergonic yourself and go like, I now have got it figured out. And I'm now on to the next thing. Go like, so this is bunting. Now let's take it deeper. Like, what's the behavior? What else is going on here? Keep observing and push yourself. The goal is to push your brain to notice things and observe beyond the point where your brain usually stops paying attention. Because that's where the infinite beauty of the world is hiding.
Great. Okay, the last question is going to move into the commercial. That last question is, are we going to be having more than one section for these workshops next year? I already feel anxiety about not getting into this workshop. I already feel like I'm going to be late. And here's the deal. Would you come and do a masterclass for us next year?
Oh yeah. So next year I'm going to be at the birding festival. And so I'm kind of an energizer bunny. But right, you cannot tire me out. So here's my challenge for the organizers of the birding festival. Like, put me to work as much as you want, right? I'll be down there. Like you want to do a workshop on that, then you want to do a master class on that, you want to like do a deep dive in that. Let's do that. Then let's go out in the field. Let's do it in the field, like because birds in the field. Birds in the field. Like I'm looking around. Like, there are more rock. There was a bird. Okay, look, there's a parrot up there, and we're going to sketch it. And how do you do that? How do you draw a bird in flight? We're going to have a section on like let's geek out on birds in flight. We can do all that sort of stuff. And then you're going to have those skills. There's going to be other people at the Morro Bay Winter Bird Festival. They bring in a ton of really high-end, brilliant birders and communicators and ornithologists and thinkers. So there are speakers and lectures that you can go to. You've got mobility problems. There are things where you can sit inside and listen to stuff. They also have these field trips to these incredible dynamic habitats. There's so many interesting habitats in this area. This is a really exciting bird festival along the coast. So you can come in there and do that. And also that kind of ecotourism, it supports the community. It makes the community realize that like healthy bird environments are important for our society. And so, people who own the grocery store and the hotel are now like, they're pro-birder, right? And so the same thing of like when you travel someplace, let your freak flag fly. Wear your binoculars around your neck when you go into the cafe and say like, yeah, I'm here to watch the birds. And then the people who are in the cafe, they're like, people come to our community because people are watching these birds. So keeping bird populations healthy here, this is actually, I've got an economic incentive in this. And
hey, turning the corner just a little bit, When this COVID thing is over, are you going to ever lead any trips anywhere on your own?
When COVID, before COVID hit, we had a field trip to the Galapagos planned for nature journaling, and that got canceled. But fortunately, we moved it forward 2 years. Had we only done 1 year, we would have been like, can we do it this year? I don't know. But we moved it forward 2 years. So those same people will be doing it. We'll be organizing other trips. We've also had nature journaling trips to Tanzania. And so if you want to kind of geek out with African birds, and also, there's a few mammals there.
Like those
Out on the Serengeti, we're not only looking at birds, but we're just like, it's like a nature geek festival out there on the Serengeti. So I lead trips. I also teach a ton of free online workshops. So every Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, I am teaching free online workshops. People can learn about those on my website, which is johnmuirlaws.com. Somebody would put that in the chat so people can link to it. That would be good. There's also hundreds of hours of free online tutorials on that website if you want to learn more about drawing and sketching on your own pace and own time. You want to get resources and materials like books that I've written on how to sketch and draw and drawing birds, and field guides that I've done, also available in my store. And I also sell things like the water brush that you saw today. Those are available there. There's also a wonderful online community called the Nature Journal Club, where people and birders and naturalists are all kind of keeping these kinds of field notes. And you kind of get on there and you'll see there's all these different people of all sorts of different ages and experience levels doing really cool observation and sharing those with each other. You can join that. I'm not really a Facebook person, but this community on Facebook is really, really useful. Because you've got 17,000 people all over the world nature journaling, and you get to look into their brain and sort of see the kind of thing. It's fun, so you can check that out. There's a lot of and in this community we do a lot of sort of talking about, kind of grappling with the great point that somebody mentioned earlier, that inner critic that is just going like, you can't do this, it's too late for you to start. Don't do this, because don't be vulnerable like that. How do you get that critic to go like, and then how can you get yourself to continue on? And it's a community of what's called deliberate practice. So we were getting feedback and being really intentional about what we're doing, and it allows all of us to develop these skills really quickly. And it's a lot of fun. This world is amazing. And it's a beautiful, beautiful place. And the more that we can take this moment that we have to be alive and make the most of that, it's so good to be here.
Well, as we close up, we at the Morro Bay Winter Bird Festival really appreciate you guiding us through this last couple hours. And it was good fun. And I think we all learned a lot of good stuff, and we can't wait to see you in person next year. A lot of us will be taking some of those free classes and Zoom classes that you offer, checking out your website with all the content and all the list of what pen and what paper and what colored pencils to use. Thank you very much. And we really appreciate. Thank you, John Muir Laws. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.